Hi guys, this is Ifeoma Odunlami from the Odunlami Law Firm. It's been a while and I'm really excited to be here today. Happy New Year, everyone. I hope everyone's doing good. I have a really great topic for you guys today. So I'm going to wait for a couple of people to come on and then we can get started. Um, so the topic we're going to talk about today is the marriage interview. I just want to give you a few tips on how to prepare for the marriage interview. So for those who don't know me, my name is Ifeoma Odunlami. I'm an immigration attorney from the Odunlami Law Firm in New Jersey, but we serve clients in all 50 states of the United States and abroad if you're looking to come into the United States, right? So I'm an immigrant. I'm an immigration attorney. I'm also an immigrant, and that's why it's my passion to help other immigrants to get their American dream, to make their American dream a reality, which is getting their citizenship or getting their green card, helping their families come over. And so today, I'm going to talk about the marriage interview. So you guys know that when you're applying for to get a green card through marriage, you first of all fill out the forms. You fill out the I-130, I-130A, the I-4 if you're in the United States. And for the purpose of this video, we're going to be talking about the adjustment of status interview here in the United States. So you're going to fill out the I-485, the I-765, the I-131 if you're looking to get advanced parole, which is a document that allows you to travel. The I-765 is the document that allows you to get a work permit so that you can work here while you're waiting for your petition to be approved, right? And then your spouse, the U.S. citizen or the green card holder, has to also file an affidavit of support, So those are the documents you file, and you file them to the USCIS office based on where you live, right? And all that information is on the USCIS website. And then you have to put together all the documents to show that it's a real, genuine relationship and it wasn't entered into for immigration purposes. So the basis of this interview that you're going for will be to look at both of you, your spouse, and the U.S. citizen or the green card holder and their spouse to see whether it's a real marriage, right? So every marriage interview, they're looking to make sure that when you entered into this marriage, you entered into it for the intent of living with your spouse, being with your spouse. It's a real marriage and all that. Now, things happen that maybe it doesn't work out, and that's the topic of another video. But for those who go through the process and get to the interview, you know how nerve-wracking it can be, because this interview is a make or break. We all know that. So you want to present your best foot forward. And I have to tell you this, just because you're in a genuine relationship, don't take it for granted that USCIS is going to see this, because USCIS believes that 70% of the marriages are fraudulent marriages. So when you come forward, unless you have, gold evidence of that show that it's a genuine relationship, they're looking at you, they're watching your body language, they're looking at you, looking at your documents, asking questions, and you want to make sure that you do well in this interview so that they don't call you back for a Stokes interview. A Stokes interview is when they separate you and your spouse, and they ask you the same questions, but at different times to see how your answers turn out. And that interview typically is a second interview. Sometimes you go in the first time and they just separate you. And I think they do this because they've looked at the documents you submitted and it doesn't even meet the sniff test. So as soon as you come in, they feel that, this is not a real relationship, and they start a Stokes interview. But we're going to talk about those who are invited to come together and, what you need to be thinking about, how you should present yourself. Because sometimes, just the wrong, you might say the wrong thing and turn the whole interview to what do you call it? An expedition where the USCIS officer thinks this is not a real marriage, and I'm going to make sure I dig and find out, and any discrepancy becomes a reason for a notice of intent to deny. So you have to treat this interview like it was a job interview. It's serious. right? I'm not trying to scare you or anything, but I just want you guys to be prepared, right? Because sometimes you meet an officer who maybe will look at you and figure out that it's real, but other officers, it's your burden to show them that it's a real marriage. So you have to come prepared, and you have to put your best foot forward. So how do you do that? Let's start by when you get the interview notice, right? The notice will give you information regarding the documentary evidence they want you to bring. Read that notice carefully and make sure you bring everything with you, right? That would be things such as your passports. Typically, I ask that you take all the passports you've had since you came into the country, right? That would be your original birth certificate, original marriage certificate, and you also want to make a copy of all the documents you bring to the interview, because you don't want to give USCIS your original documents. And when you submit the documents earlier on, you're giving them copies. So when you come to the interview, you want to come with the original so that they can see it. So you want to bring your tax returns, updated evidence bona fides, which is what we call evidence of a real marriage. So when you submitted your documents in the past, you might have submitted the things you had at that time, which might not have been a lot, because if you got married just before you filed, you wouldn't have a lot of documents showing that your finances are commingled, right? You wouldn't have a lot of that. You may not have a lot of documents showing that you've lived together and all that. So when you come for the interview, that's a good time for you to bring all the updated documents, right? You want to, if things have changed in the interim between the time you filed and the interview, such as if you have a child, you want to bring the child's birth certificate. If you purchased a house, you want to bring your mortgage statements from when you purchased it till date. If you've moved to a new place, you want to show yourself on the lease. Now, another thing is, why those documents are important is that USCIS recognizes that when you get married, you might not be able to commingle your finances, because the immigrant spouse may not have a social security number, and may not be able to maybe get on a lease, may not be able to have a bank account, even though there's some bank accounts that will let you open an account without a social, but some people are not aware of that. So by the time you come for the interview, typically you would have gotten your social security number. So you really have no excuse for not having your finances commingled. So you want to bring updated bank statements showing that it's a joint bank statement that shows that two people are actually using this account, not a joint bank statement in name only, where it has both your names and your address and that's it. That bank statement has to show that both people are using the account. The account is being used to pay bills. Maybe your direct debit from your work is going into that account, that kind of stuff, right? And it's a little unfair, I know, because some couples don't want to really commingle, practically, because maybe one of them has debt, one of them may have a lien, but unfortunately with USCIS, you really have to do the best that you can to prove that you have a valid marriage. So unless you have something really egregious that prevents you from commingling your finances, you really want to do that. And you want to bring it with you to the interview. So you also want to bring updated pictures, things you've done since then. Maybe you've gone on vacation since then. You want to bring pictures of where you've been. You want to bring, if you went by air, you want to bring the flight itinerary. You want to show your hotel information if you stayed in a hotel. And even if you did just traveled by road, if you went to a particular scenic place and you took a picture, you want to show all of that. They want to see a slice of your life as a couple, right? Maybe you guys with your family members, now because of coronavirus, a lot of people are not meeting together, but families are still meeting over Zoom. So you might want to take a picture of a Zoom conference with all the family members, maybe during Christmas. At least that's what we did, for the family members that we couldn't see. We were all together and we took, pictures to show that Christmas we were together in spirit, if not in person. So when you're preparing for your marriage interview and preparing to get your green card, you and your U.S. citizen spouse have to be really detailed with showing all this information that USCIS wants. So you want to come to the interview, say, they tell you 30 minutes early, but sometimes it's really hard to tell how long that line outside is going to be. So I really tell my clients, get there like an hour early. You can, come out, look at, see how long the line is, sit back in your car. But most times they don't even really give you any problems about it now. In the early days of coronavirus, they were really strict about that, about not letting you in before 30 minutes. But now they're not really that strict. So come as early as you can. Come dressed, business casual, and bring your documents. And I always tell my clients to bring it in a folder, something that is easy for you to refer to, because sometimes when they're asking you these questions, it's a little nerve-wracking, and then you don't want to have all these documents in the bag that everything falls out, and you can feel the angst of the officer looking at you like, why are you wasting my time? And then you get more nervous, and then you start stammering and not answering questions that you should know the answers to. So do yourself a solid, be organized, get a binder, tab, here, birth certificate, ID information, utility bills, from when to when, child's birth certificate. So tab it nicely so that if they ask you for this document, you're able to look through and give it to them. And also, what else? Now, let's talk about the questions they're going to ask you, right? Nobody can really tell you all the questions they're going to ask you, because the officer themselves, sometimes they just go by their instincts based on what you've said. But there's certain questions that for sure they're going to ask you, and you and your spouse need to be on point with those answers. They're going to ask you how you met. They're going to ask you how you met. And this might seem like an easy question, but believe it or not, that question can be really complicated these days, in days of internet dating, meeting on Facebook, but not meeting in person. So it's important that you and your spouse determine what you consider your first meeting, because your spouse may think the first meeting was when you saw in person. And you were thinking the first time we met was when he or she slid into my DM and said hello. So agree when the first meeting was. Was it the first meeting in person, or was it when you first said hello? Because sometimes you might think that USCIS will understand the discrepancy, but trust me, when they send that notice of intent to deny, I've seen some notice of intent to deny that make no sense, because it's like, well, come on, obviously this was it was a mistake, but you don't even want to go there. So the most important thing about that interview is practicing for your interview. Not practicing because you're making things up, but practicing because people forget things, People have a different view about how something happened. Like I had a couple that I was prepping for an interview. In my office, we prep every marriage case because we want to make sure that our clients remember, have the same recollection, right? And that they're confident because they've talked to each other, they remember things. And a lot of times when I do the marriage prep, the one client is saying to the other, no, that's not the way it happened. Don't you remember? And the other one's like, oh, I didn't even remember. Okay, that's true. So this is really important, guys. Don't skip this step because you've been married donkey years, right? I've been married for 21 years, and there are many things that my husband and I won't even recollect. Our recollections are going to be so different, right? So part of your marriage interview preparation is preparing yourselves, going over questions together, right, with your attorney, preferably, right? So as I was saying, I had this couple that I had asked, when I always ask, how did the proposal go? Did it go? Did your spouse propose with a ring? Because that's a question we get all the time at the interviews. And the male immigrant said he proposed on a certain day, and his wife said another day. And I was like, guys, why is there discrepancy? This is not something you can forget, because when somebody proposes to you, typically that's a special time. So, well, the woman said that the day he proposed without a ring, I don't consider that a proposal. I feel he was just filling out to see what I would say if he actually proposed. So in her mind, the real proposal was when he got serious, bought a ring, and went down on one knee. And he thought the proposal was when they were lying down in bed, feeling good, and whatever. So that's the reason why you need to talk about this, right? And USCIS will also ask you questions about your spouse's family, and first of all, this might sound, really basic, but you need to know your spouse's full name and the spelling. Because if you go there and say, oh, I call him John, but his name is really Osari, or I'm not really sure, I call him John, that's not going to fly. You better know how to pronounce the name, even if you call him John. Okay? You need to know if your spouse has children, even if they're not close, because some people, because when your spouse fills out the I-485, they put the names of all their children that they're supposed to, the ones that they had with different women or the ones they haven't seen. You need to know them, even if your spouse is not, is not close to those children. You need to know their names, even if both of you don't have any relationship with those children. You need to know about your spouse. Your spouse needs to know about the U.S. citizen's family as well, right? Parents, children, where they are, where you've lived. You need to know about your spouse's daily routine, when they start work, when they come back from work. And this may be things that sound so basic, but if you miss it by, say, an hour, USCIS will be looking at that relationship with a magnifying glass. And sometimes you may not even know when your spouse leaves because you're still sleeping, but if you do a preparation before the interview and you say, oh, you leave around 6, right? And he's like, no, babe, I leave at 6:30. That's a good thing to know. So typically when we have a marriage interview, we go through a lot of questions, right? So that the couple, can, polish their recollection so that they can talk amongst each other, reminding each other about certain things that the other person might have forgotten. So another thing that is really important, another really important tip is this. If the officer asks you a question and you don't understand the question, it's really okay for you to ask the officer to clarify. Because if you answer the question based on what you think the question is, it may look like you're being fraudulent or you're lying. Remember, a lot of times you're not given the benefit of, the doubt. So listen carefully, right? And don't interrupt the officer, okay? Listen carefully. If you don't understand the question, ask. Another thing is, do not lie. Sometimes you want to look good, right? The officer may ask you what gift you give your spouse for Valentine's Day, and you, as a couple, you don't give each other gifts, and you think, oh my God, this is going to sound really bad that we don't give each other gifts, and I gave my spouse nothing, and then you want to lie. Don't. USCIS is not expecting you to have a perfect marriage. They're expecting you to have a real marriage. So however you want to do your marriage is up to you in terms of, all those, emotional things. But you want to be truthful, right? And another thing is you have to show evidence that both of you live together. And I say this to people that don't live together for some reason, right? Sometimes you may not live together because one spouse is in school and cannot move to the state where the other spouse is. That's acceptable. However, you need to show that both of you are seeing each other, you need to show there's communication, phone calls, texts, visiting each other like, couples would. So, but if you're living in the same state, the same city, and you don't live together, that's a problem. I wouldn't even take those cases. I won't. So let's see what else. I think that's pretty much it. Let's see if I have any questions. Hey, Rachel, how are you? Happy New Year. So I don't see any questions, so I'm going to sign off. But this year, I have committed to coming to share immigration tips because I'm hoping that this is the year that people who are waiting to get their green card will get their green card. People who are waiting to file for their family members can get started. And honestly, the more you know, the better you are for it, because there's a lot of fake information online. There's a lot of people who are taking advantage of other people and filing documents for them, but they don't know what they're doing. So this video does not take the place of a proper consultation with an attorney. I want you to know that. But just for you to have an idea of what is going on, the changes in the law, and maybe something that you may hear might be beneficial for somebody. I remember I had a video where I talked about parole in place, which was a way to adjust status for people who had children or spouses in the military and people who came through the border. And somebody listened to that, forwarded to his sibling, and now this person who's been in the United States for a long time, who had no chance of adjusting their status because they came through the border, now they're able to do that. So please share this video with your friends, families, and subscribe so that anytime I come on, you're alerted, okay? And Rachel says, please, I want to know how long one can wait before filing in to get 10 years residency. So Rachel, you have to explain what you mean. How long one can wait from what? Is it from when you get married or from what? Can you give me more information on that question so I can answer it for you, okay? All right. Right, okay. So you're nothing else coming in. So basically, I'm just going to give a stab at what I think you mean. How long can you wait before you file to get your green card if you're married to a U.S. citizen? Okay, from when you get married, correct. Okay, that's what I thought. So now, when you get married, right, and you've been married for a short period of time, you're going to expect that you're going to get the conditional green card, which is 2 years, right? So the way they do it is if you get your green card less than 2 years before from when you married, you get a conditional green card. That's 2 years. You still have to remove the conditions. So if you wait and file your petition, like maybe at least a year and a half after you've gotten married, the chances of you getting your green card, getting a 10-year green card, is increased, because by the time the process goes through and you're awarded your green card, you'd have been married for more than 2 years. And when you get that green card, it's going to be 10 years. It won't be a conditional. Okay? Does that help? All right. All right, guys. Rachel, I thank you for the question. That was a great question, because sometimes some people want to be strategic about how they do their filing, because they may not want to just keep going, because every time you go before the USCIS for another interview, because when you do the conditional green card, a lot of times they schedule you for another interview, and sometimes you may not want to do that. So you might want to wait until your marriage is a little older before you file, so that when you go for the interview, you're going for a 10-year green card. And another benefit of that actually is when you get married and file right away, you really don't have a lot of the bona fides, the commingling, showing that you've been a couple, So what you have to show at that time is proof that you were dating, like things that you had to show that you were dating before you got married. But you may not have a lot of the information you need, lots of the evidence you need to show that your lives are entwined and meshed and all that. But if you're married for a year and a half, you should have that. So sometimes it's actually better to kind of wait a little so that you can have more evidence, but you really don't have to if you don't want to, because there's nothing that stops you from filing when you feel like filing. So Oladosu Elijah says, hello, if someone is in a relationship and her spouse is not ready to file for her, can she still get a green card? Yes. If someone is in a relationship and the spouse is not ready to file for her, what that tells me is that there might be something going on in that relationship, some form of control, right? Some form of maybe some abuse. The control can be abusive. So that's where you can file for VAWA. VAWA is Violence Against Women's Act, but it also applies to men. It doesn't apply to just women. So if you're in a relationship and your spouse is refusing to file for you or making excuses, that could be a form of control, because they know that you're not able to get your life started. You're not able to do certain things. You can't work. You can't maybe go to school because you can't get loans, And so by not filing for you, they keep you where they want you to be, under their control. that could you may qualify for VAWA. So if this is you or somebody you know, have them call my office 973-993-1900. We're happy to help. VAWA is one of the case types that we do a lot of. Okay. All right, guys, it's been really nice being with you guys. So I'm gonna sign off now, and I will be back another time. Okay. Have a great week, everyone, and Happy New Year again.